we are basically now on the home screen.
And we haven't got any content. We've got a shared folder, but let's go ahead and run a query.
Yeah.
And you'll see on the left, it's pulled in all the models from our project,
Yes.
but you don't have to do this, but we're going to go for that pull requests one.
Yeah.
And so again, it's pulled in all the columns as dimensions, and you can see at the bottom, we've got those two metrics.
Yeah.
And so for example, you could click on total pull requests and hit run query, and fingers crossed, everything's going to work for us. Great.
Hey.
And so you've got the total pull requests, over all time. So we've 2,325. And the thing is here, this is kind of where, so inside Lightdash and when people querying the metrics layer, this sidebar on the left is fixed, right, for the stakeholder. So the end user can't change the definition of a pull request. They don't need to look into like all the tables that power it. They just know I've got pull requests, and then I've got these different ways I could split it. So you could look at, for example, if you click, let's think of a dimension, maybe the state, that'll tell you how many are open versus closed.
Okay.
So I imagine there's going to be, 5 open or something like that. Okay, 6. So you've got 6. And you can see the total still the same. So it's just taken the metric. And what this is doing, it's letting us, this was the work that we were saying kind of gets repeated by the data team, is that we're now building these tables. Like the end user without SQL can start building their own aggregations, like answering their own questions, whether that's like by the pull request state or who merged it or what week it is, without having to like recreate the underlying tables over and over again.
Yeah, and this is and the other thing is like you also like provide this user experience now to the business user. So like how to use labels and so on. So you might even like optimize it a little bit, do some testings to see how people are working with it, where do they maybe not sure what they should do, because then you have this power of the description, as you can see here. So it immediately shows up as a tooltip, which is really great. So people, like you have to pull up another dialogue to really see, okay, actually what it is. But this is often like the thing where I really care about. It's like this user experience for people where their daily job is not like to figure stuff out, but just like to come up with interesting insights and so on.
Yeah, you definitely want this to be as painless as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's ultimately not a lot of people's jobs to be digging into the data.
We immediately have a chart. So
you even have a chart with one very tiny bar and one huge bar.
Which is good.
But so the thing that I was interested in at the start of this was the average cycle time.
Yeah.
And so I usually like to look at that on a weekly cadence. So if you go ahead and there you go. And maybe by
closed.
Maybe when it was created.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also nice. So this is, for example, what you do. So I think the created ad is a timestamp, and so you basically then provide different kind of granularities how you can aggregate the data. So
yeah, this is the flexibility we were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's like you can just go ahead and change from week to month with a couple of clicks, and there it is. And so we started to, maybe you could put this as a line chart. So at the top of the chart, you have an option. We started working really hard on this at the start of 2023.
Yeah.
So we were trying to drive this down.
You can see a little bit. We have one outlier.
We do, yeah. Okay, got to figure out what was going on. But yeah, our kind of main goal here is to keep this under 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so there it is.
Looks quite good here.
Looks okay. And so you can imagine that if I was to get more complicated with this, I might add multiple metrics, or I might have at the top, you could filter it to be, only in the last quarter, or a rolling window. This is always just showing the last month of data or something like that. But then to just go from the weekly to a monthly cadence, you just have to change that, that sidebar. Just say, I actually only want to see this per month, not per week. And usually, if you imagine this table is more complicated, you'd have to go back to the transform layer and recreate that aggregation. But what we do here, and the trick of the metrics layer, is to delay aggregation as late as possible in order to give the end users more flexibility.
And just show, because we mentioned it a little bit, that stuff is happening at the runtime. So this is basically what it does. So it generates, in the end, it generates a SQL query that then is sent to wherever you have the data. So in my case, for example, in BigQuery. So now this is sent to BigQuery. BigQuery runs the query and gives us the results back. And so this is like what runtime means. And the good thing is like, so you can bake in, let's say, the different kind of things you want to make sure. So that things go in the right way, that are defined in the right way, that let's say the average is calculated in the right way. So all these things that can go wrong when people try to do it themselves, you make sure that you take care of that. So the things don't go wrong, which shouldn't go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is quite a simple one, but you can, I mean, it already has some, date time logic to get the month. If you imagine this was built off multiple tables, there'd be joins here, maybe, some left joins, some inner joins. So and we want to abstract that away.
Yeah.
And I think maybe just one more benefit that I think is not as obvious, but that once you build a metrics layer, one thing that tools that build on top of it, so tools like Lightdash can do. So one thing is like, okay, great. There's this idea that we delayed aggregation to give end users flexibility, but the metadata that flexibility also allows a lot of really like interesting interactions with the data. So, for example, if you scroll up, to that chart, there was that peak in the weekly. Oh, okay, we changed to monthly now, but you could take that one where the cycle time was 52. Okay, like that seems high, and if you click it, you could just say view underlying data, and it's going to show you all the records that powered that. Now, if we'd written the chart from a raw query, it would be really hard. You'd have to like interpret the SQL to figure out, okay, like, well, where did that number come from and how do you go into it? But because the metrics layer controls how the query is written, it understands, a lot about, well, how can I drill more into this? How can I break it down by a different dimension? And so you get a lot of rich interactions for free, essentially.
Right. And now I can basically just check, okay, what is stuff that maybe took a little bit longer, and can really see, okay.
Like so for example, if you wanted to if you wanted to blame someone on the team, if you close this, this is real data. So let's say if this turns out terribly, we shouldn't keep it in the recording. But if you click that point again, there's also a drill by option. So you drill into this 52, and you can say if you do it by the created by. So if you scroll up a bit, I think there's a created by field. Yeah, there you go. And what it's going to do is it takes all of the data there and now splits everything for that month down by who created the pull request. And so there you go. Now you can see, which ones took the longest. And in this case, the outlier is an external contributor, and that always takes longer to review those. So it's kind of given this way to drill in and interact.
Yeah. And you just can do this because like you have this, let's say, like the kind of configuration, like how things work together, just defined beforehand. And so this is why you can.
Also, I mean, we haven't done any behind the scenes stuff here. This is a completely empty Lightdash project, and you wrote two metrics basically. And it's just
generate before,
and you ran a generate, and all of this interaction you get for free basically because. The metrics layer knows about the underlying table structure. It knows how metrics can be composed together and which dimensions apply to which metrics. And we've done this for one table, but this works across, multiple join tables as well.
Yeah. And this is the part which I really like, and which I, for example, immediately fell in love with this whole solution. I just want to get here something which I define one time, and whenever I do an analysis, I know that the right stuff is here. And so if I figure out during the way, this is so, for example, which makes me frustrated if I can't do it. So, for example, I figure out, okay, I never really need this, or I need this in a different kind of, let's say, configuration, or different kind of shape. I can then change it one time, and it becomes visible and usable for the future, and I don't have to redo it all the time. So, and another thing which I like is like it's pretty straightforward. So for me, it's just like I go back here in my configuration and I change the stuff here. So it's not like something that, and this is something which at least like slows me down. It's like when I really have to rethink, okay, how can I solve this now that I want to show it in a different way? So where do I have to go? And so here it's quite straightforward. So I just have one place where I do this stuff, and then I update it, and then I show it. Can show the different.
Yeah, that's it. And if you had 100 charts all using that same metric, you get to change it in one place, and all the charts will be fixed, which I think is like a huge benefit of centralizing that logic.
I mean, in the end, we did an introduction, so we really wanted to showcase, okay, actually, what is the metrics layer, and then we just wanted to show, okay, how let's say how it works within DBT and how quickly you can get from a definition up to a chart. That because like this kind of chart, we can now already put into we can save it, and then we can put it into. So I think this was average cycle time. Then save, and I think we can then here just already add it to a dashboard. So like say dev ops or whatever, and here we are. So now go back.
Beautiful.
We have it here.
That easy.
Yeah.
There you go. And the data team can. So this, that's something that the business user might have made, but the data team has control of the underlying definitions. And it also means we can swap out the whole back end. You could change warehouses. We could change the underlying technologies, but still have that chart powered, by the one metric in the metrics layer.
Yeah.
So it really decouples the kind of the business experience from the kind of like technical back end.
Yeah, this is why I said so. I think metrics layer is here to stay. So because like it enables this, and I mean, put it like this. So it's yes. I don't know. Did you had some experience where you sit down with business people and really go down like in this configuration file to really say, okay, what should we do? So how do we define stuff? So how well does it work?
You mean like how do you kind of get to the metric definitions?
Yeah,
I think that this is something that like good data teams are really, really good at. I mentioned before that an underappreciated part of the job is helping people come up with the right questions, as well as finding the answers, and that's takes a lot of interpersonal skills and being able to sympathize with the different business areas. I think that's why increasingly you see data teams where the data people are embedded in certain business domains. So you have someone on the finance team that gets finance, and someone on the product team that gets product analytics.
Yeah.
And they'll usually work with the end users, right, to lock these in. And that's good because those conversations are really, really difficult.
Yeah.
They take time, but at the end of it, you actually write down the metric. Okay, this is what it is. We all agree on what this means. Let's document it. Let's get it in the metrics layer, and now anybody can query it.
Yeah, and it's checked in, and so you can basically evolve it. I think this is I think the evolving part is something which we sometimes don't appreciate much. So in the end, this has to evolve, and it can evolve. So I'm also like this idea when you really work close with a team, because like at least one benefit that I see is like you get the conversations that are not data related, but in the end are totally data related. So you sit in a meeting with product team, marketing team, and they discuss things where they struggle to find out. And when you are the data person sitting there, you immediately translate it here into this. You can say, hey, yeah, this could be a metric, could be interesting. So you can immediately translate what they are talking about into something which is then data related, which would be super hard for someone from the marketing team to get it to you, because if they later come to you, you miss all the context. So if you sit there, you already have the context. And
yeah.